Coach, how's your secondary, especially with a couple of first-year guys sprinkled in there? How do you feel they've played leading up to now?
Well, so far this camp, I think Coach said it earlier, we're really excited about the progression of the older guys, the guys who played last year, played in the past. But we also are excited about the young guys because I think we talked in fall camp, or I talked to those guys about them being young and incredibly talented, incredibly fast. Well, sometimes when you're young and fast, you go the wrong way, but you go really fast. But it allows them to be able to recover a lot more quickly than they would if they were not athletic and talented. So we're excited about where we are right now.
With some of the freshmen in the secondary there, I know Coach Morris mentioned Malone, Christian Davis, and Eric Sutton. What made those guys really stand out? Is it a talent standpoint or just being able to take things up faster or a little bit of both?
Well, I think that our older guys did a great job bringing them in this summer and kind of getting them familiar with the standard, getting them familiar with the program. So I have to give the older guys a lot of credit when we even talk about these young guys. But when you watch Christian and you watch Mikhail and you watch Eric, they just have a different gear, you know, as freshmen. And, you know, you specifically talk about Christian, and the first thing anyone who's been around him, any coach on the staff, the first thing that they'll say about him is that, man, that kid, he's really businesslike. He doesn't say much, but he's all about business. Well, you don't get that much in freshmen. Matt wasn't like that as a freshman. Talking about Matt Davis, but you don't get that. And when you see guys that come in with a different attitude, a different approach to things as freshmen, that's really exciting. So that's the first thing. But then, like I said earlier, when you watch them run and when you watch them move around and they do things athletically that you just don't coach, that's exciting.
Now, Coach Morris had also mentioned a few of the veteran guys that had surprised him to you after camp. Who were some of those veteran guys, maybe who were trying to prove themselves a little bit, that really stood out to you?
Well, of course, Lawler is always, he's Lawler, right? You put that in the dictionary, and that's consistency, that's leadership, that's toughness, that's effort. But some of the guys who have stood out to me thus far in camp, Nick Horton. Nick has done a great job, did a great job in the spring, great job this summer, and it has shown up in fall camp. Jackson Mitchell had some injuries in the spring, but has had a great camp. And you know, you kind of, just like Lawler, you kind of put a tag on him to be a consistent guy, so you expect that. Another guy, not necessarily from his play, but from his leadership, who has really stood out to us as a staff, is Darian Malone. Coach mentioned it, that he's a quiet leader, and he's always kind of been that. But there's been some places throughout this summer, some places throughout fall camp where he stood up and he's grabbed a hold of the defense, of the, as many of these young guys, they come in and they're looking for leadership, and he's really done a good job in that way. So those are the guys who, in my opinion, have really surprised so far, but there are others who are continually standing up.
You mentioned Nick Horton. He played defensive end in high school, but he's been a linebacker since he's been here. What's been the keys or the biggest challenges to the transition back to the defensive line for him?
Well, when Nick's a linebacker, he's really slow. And when he's a defensive end, he looks talented, athletic. No, I'm joking, but Nick was all for this move. And for us, it was an opportunity to get a guy who works hard, who loves the game, who gives great effort, who wants to contribute, for us to find a place that this guy can be successful. And moving him to defensive end has proven so far to be exactly the thing that has helped him.
How much does depth up there up front really help you guys moving forward, particularly in terms of last year and stopping it?
Well, I'm a little guy, so I don't necessarily understand getting tired after a few plays. But those defensive linemen, those guys, you have to have them operating in a fresh state, because every play is banging. You know, every play they got a body on them, and they're trying to push your body. Like I said, I'm a little guy, and I've operated in space, and so as a coach, when we have Coach Wyatt, who understands that you have to have great depth, and you have to be able to rotate those guys. You have to be able to get as many of them as you can ready to be able to play if you're going to be successful. Then it's very important, and we're excited about the depth that we do have leaving fall camp and going into the season.
How different is your defensive line and what you can do with it with Deion Green in for Mason Gentry?
Well, you know, they're both big guys, and today in recruiting, you can't find a lot of big guys, you know, and so when we have big bodies like them and Ken McLaren, it gives us an advantage. It definitely gives us an opportunity, a chance to keep blockers off the linebackers, to hold a fort, so to speak, on the front line. And they're big guys, I say again, and you got to be able to rotate those guys. You got to be able to keep them healthy. You got to be able to keep them in a place where they can go in and they can give you a set of plays, and then you can send the golf cart out there and take them off the field and put another guy in.
We heard the offensive coaches talk a lot about last year only having a fraction of playbook, and this year with more experience and new faces opening up a bit on defense with another year in the system and some new additions. Do you guys feel you can do a little bit more defensively as far as coverages or more looks than you did last year?
Well, you know, there's always the thin line, especially on defense, in that we don't want to constipate them. You know, we don't want to give them too much. We always want them to be able to play fast. But when you do have a second year, because you know, you look at last year, and I don't like to look at last year much, but throughout the season, it was a continual learning process where you're trying to determine what these guys can do, and then you go out and you put them in the fire and you determine, well, maybe they can't do that. Well, when you're in year two, you understand them a little bit more. You understand what you can do as a coach, and they understand what their expectations are as players. So we're fortunate going into year two that we feel like we're going to be able to expand the playbook just a little bit, because, you know, it's not about the playbook. It's about what those guys can do on the field. It's about what they can do very fast and what they can do with a high amount of confidence. And we're excited about that right now. The fact that we feel like our guys left the spring understanding the defense, and they came into fall camp and they showed the freshmen as much as they could as players what we do on defense. And they've had the opportunity to go through fall camp and beat each other up while continuing to fortify their knowledge of the defense. And so we're just excited to be able to step out there against another opponent to see, you know, how much work we've really done as a staff and as players.
You went through a few players last year at your star linebacker position. R.C. Cox is listed as your starter now. What does he bring to that position?
Well, R.C. is a guy who has, throughout last season, he's made plays. He's been a consistent guy. Not many mental errors. He runs well enough to play the position. Is a pretty good blitzer. But we're excited about Kyron Mitchell being able to, as well, help us fortify that position, because he is a dynamic blitzer, and then he, as RC, also does a pretty good job in coverage. So both of those guys, along with young guys who may eventually emerge, give us we feel like a much better group of players, much more equipped to do the things that we want to do at that position this season.
What is the timetable on Kyron?
We don't like to talk about injuries, so I won't. So I'm not. So
Anything else?
What concerns you the most about North Texas's offense that, again, you've seen the personnel last year, you know the coaches, but you haven't seen them together. What concerns you the most about them?
Well, like Coach Craddock said earlier, you know, that first game, you're really concerned about yourself. And taking that approach is helpful in this case because of the fact that it's a new staff. And Graham Harrell is his first time as an offensive coordinator. And Coach Luttrell has been here and he's been there and he has roots in different places. So there's a lot of unknown there. So we have studied different programs that these guys have been a part of and different philosophies, and I think that probably is the biggest thing, is that you go into a game and you just can't identify exactly how they will attack, because North Carolina is very different than Texas Tech in terms of the roots that these guys have. And you don't, once again, you don't want to constipate your players with that kind of stuff. But I think it's very concerning, you know, when you kind of got to go into a game and you don't know. But really quickly, as we get into the game, you'll know, you know. But when our guys go out there armed with rules and armed with the fundamentals of football, blocking, tackling, keeping the football contained, creating turnovers, then until we as coaches determine how they are trying to attack us, we'll be fine.
Both sides of the ball, I guess last year was the last 4 minutes of the first half and the starting 4 minutes of the second half where you had walls. How did you guys work on that in terms of trying to fix that?
Well, we identified it as a staff. We identified it to our players, and we harped on it. And we had different times during the off season where we talked about 4 over 4. 4 over 4 equals 1. If we could complete the 4 minutes before the half and then the 4 minutes after we came out of the halftime, we could complete a game, you know, because those were the areas, offensively, defensively, special teams, those were the areas where we struggled. And one thing I'll say about our team is that they really bought into that. They took ownership. As coaches, we did too. There's some things we as coaches did during those times that didn't match up as well. So all parties took ownership, and you know that to solve a problem, you got to admit that there is one. And our team took hold of that. They took ownership, and we had an incredible leadership throughout the off season, the summertime, and guys made a commitment to finish things. Made a commitment. You know what? I'm going to cross the line, but I'm going to take one more step. And we felt like addressing those things and showing them this is where we jacked it up, you know, and it's just that simple. And our guys, like I said, owning up to that and making a commitment that they would do everything they could throughout their work, right? They hadn't played a game, but throughout their work and the times that they could to see things differently, to operate in a different way.